Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I think if I was starting to write the budget and I had a blank sheet of paper, the first two things I'd want to say is what does the country need, what does the business community need, and what do our hard-pressed families need? Now, clearly, in respect of the business community, we've got to do nothing that harms them. They are the wealth creators. They create the wealth that we use to provide our public services. In the case of hard-pressed families, we've done a considerable amount of work. We've frozen the fuel duty. That's extremely welcome. The living wage, particularly in a low-wage area such as I represent, will be very welcome. And the increased tax-free allowances, to name just two or three of those. Could I then develop one or two of the other issues that have been to the fore? In the case of housing, there is a danger, I think, that the whole of our policies, not just in housing, this applies to other issues, but housing and planning in particular, the focus is too much on what is good for London, the South East, and perhaps some of our bigger cities. The issues in Cleethorpes, Scunthorpe and Hull and so on are very different. In North East Lincolnshire, in my constituency, the average cost of a three-bedroomed semi-detached property is around £140,000. Now that seems an absolute bargain, of course, to when you're down here in the South East. But the reality is, though I support very much the changes to stamp duty, it makes a very minimal change to saving to people buying their average sort of property in my constituency. In respect of planning, can I just say that, yes, the planning process needs streamlining, it's too slow, but we all know that if you trample over the wishes of local communities on planning issues, it can be politically very dangerous ground, and we mustn't, under any circumstances, undermine the local democratic process that rubber stamps those planning decisions. Moving on to issues about the devolution and city deals and the like. Again, I very much welcome the further enhancements to the Northern Powerhouse and to the various city deals that have been announced. But again, and I've said this on a number of occasions, the UK is more than the big cities. We need to ensure that something for our smaller provincial towns is also done. My particular region has no big city alongside it. We don't have a trickle-down as some of the provincial towns neighbouring, say, Manchester, Sheffield, Leeds and so on. But we very much need a process that enables us to both regenerate the local economy and further develop it, and for the physical regeneration of our towns and villages. I know that ministers have taken seriously the proposals that have come forward from the Greater Grimsby Project Board, which is putting forward suggestions for a town deal, and my understanding is that the further negotiations are taking place in respect of that. And the advantage of the town deal, as has been put forward for the Grimsby Cleethorpes area, is that it could provide a template for how we go about regenerating and improving the economies of many of our small towns. Connectivity and transport, of course, are equally important if we're to boost local economies. And it's a pity that the Transport Minister has just left his place on the front bench, because if I said to him A15, M11 and A180, I would not need to elaborate, because I've bent his and Transport Minister's ears, including the now Treasury Minister, about it on more than one occasion. And I need go into no detail. But if we are going to revitalise our local towns, provincial towns, particularly those on the coastal communities, then we desperately need to improve our connectivity, and that means rail and road, basically. Just returning in the last few seconds to housing, earlier today I had a meeting with the Humber Landlords Association, and they emphasised to me how important it was that the public and private sectors work together in partnership if we are to solve these housing issues. I'm very much in favour of developing social housing, whether it's council build funded or through housing associations or whatever. but let's not forget the private sector can help solve this problem. Thank you, Mr. Deputy.